you're poor because you have no money because no source of income. A source of income for most of us is a job. Where do jobs come from? The private sector, businesses, especially small and medium-sized enterprises. Then shouldn't we think about the environment of those businesses in which they get to thrive or not?
Hi, welcome to another video. If you're new to this channel, we sometimes react to the goats of freedom: economic freedom, individual freedom, and all sorts of freedoms. Today, we are going to react to Magatte Wade. She's a Senegalese entrepreneur, libertarian, and the first time I heard about her was on Jordan Peterson's podcast, and I was taken aback by her intelligence, by her background, by her mission. And she absolutely needs to be in my channel. And this is the best way that I can introduce her to you if you haven't heard about her. And even if you did, this is gonna be a good video.
And would you know that as I was building this company, at least back then, it would take you a quick 20 minutes, maybe faster, depending on how fast you type, to establish an LLC online. Compare that to the almost 2 years it took me to legally register the sister company in Senegal.
Right. So let's just focus on that for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're comparing 20 minutes to 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then you have to ask yourself, and I'm sure you have, how much time and energy do people have? Like, it's not an easy thing to set up a business. It's a daring thing, and there's a tremendous amount of risk involved, and you'll probably fail. That's the risk side of it. Now, you might succeed beyond your wildest dreams, but if you exhaust all your hardworking and entrepreneurial people by forcing them to jump through idiot hoops nonstop, all that you do is keep people absolutely impoverished. And so we've got a key issue with regard to poverty right here, which is the presence of a stunning amount of unnecessary red tape. So how is it, do you think, that the U.S. has managed to make it so that you can register a company in 20 minutes?
Jordan Peterson famously talks way too much on his podcast, and he talks sometimes even more than his guests. But to be fair, everything that he says is interesting and useful in the conversation. So.
The Mystery of Capital, Hernando de Soto.
De Soto, I was going to bring him up.
De Soto's great, man. That's a great book.
Yes.
And he points out that in some of the so-called developing countries, especially the more corrupt ones, not only does it take multiple years to do anything at all legally, but by the time you jump through all the hoops to do it legally, the laws have been changed so that what you do is no longer valid.
That is absolutely the case. So you're asking me a very good question. And the way I will go about that is I'm going to try to take this opportunity to debunk a myth. Because this whole conversation with you, I take it as my opportunity to debunk so many myths about African poverty. Hence, what would it take for to build African prosperity? Because I'm not interested in alleviating poverty. I'm not interested in just like, oh, can I be a little bit less poor? No, I want to be prosperous. I think my people, like anybody else, should be prosperous. So,
yes, and we should also let's point out very clearly, since we're debunking myths, that that's actually a high ethical aim, is that we want life more abundant for everyone. We don't want to limp along, lowering our carbon footprint, barely scraping the surface. We want people to be prosperous and free, and life to be abundant, and everyone to have enough educational resources and to thrive. And that's the ethical aim.
To me, it starts and it ends with it. Human flourishing. Now, what it means for somebody to flourish, it's going to be up to them to decide. But should everybody have access to human flourishing? You betcha. So here, going back to the question and why the U.S. and in Africa not, and then Hernando de Soto making the case that oftentimes corrupt countries make it so hard. So there, the myth that I debunk is so often, I talk to people and they're like, oh, Africa, these countries, this region is so corrupt. And I'm like, yes, my country might be corrupt, almost as bad as Chicago. You know what I mean by that. So corruption is, if you will, everywhere. But the way it manifests itself is different from place to place. And so I would like to argue on the order and the relationship between corruption and these laws that Hernando de Soto was talking about.
Which one comes first, the egg or the chicken? That's what she's gonna tell us now.
I like to argue that corruption is a cause of senseless laws, is a cause too many laws and also senseless laws. When you have those together, then you breed you breed corruption. Give you an example. This is another example that we had to go through. My current company is a skincare company. Skin is skin. So for that, we have to import some ingredients because if you don't have the you need you need the inputs that you need at the standard of quality that you need them in order to remain competitive in your marketplace. My marketplace is the United States. That's where the people have the money to spend all of this, to spend on our products. They understand our products. This is just, it's one of the best markets for us for many different reasons. So it means that everything behind the scene has to be world class. The whole chain up and down has to be world class. And so ingredients, no different. So we have to bring in some ingredients. Well, guess what, Jordan? For some of my ingredients, the tariff is 45% to enter the country, 45%. Others, almost 70%. How do you expect me to be competitive? Because for every 50 cents you add on tariffs, I have to sell my products $2 more than I would have in order for me to actually make it. I become very uncompetitive very quickly, quality for quality, product for product. So there we had to, so now, if instead of making it a 45%, how about maybe it's a 0% like it is in the US? If I had to bring the same product here in the US, 0% tariff on it. Or make it 5% or 2%, 3%, something that makes sense. So then do you really think that I'm gonna try to jump through the hoops of avoiding that 45% or that 70%? There's no need. Pay it and move on because you've got better things to do.
Oh, the tariffs. Oh, the tariffs. This video is, I think, a couple of years old, and oh boy. I won't even say anything. Okay, let's go.
See how bad laws and senseless laws breed corruption because people will then, it is cheaper and faster for people to pay the bribe and move on than to adhere to the law.
In Brazil, we have similar tariffs, and the results are disastrous. It's ridiculous. We're not competitive. It's not good. It's not good long term. In the US now, it's not 0% anymore. Like she just said, it changed a lot in the past few months under Trump, and we will see the results later. I'm not qualified enough to say what's going to happen. I just think tariffs are bad in general.
It's what we have inherited in most African nations. As I noticed, the discrepancy and the difference between doing business back home and doing business in the United States. At first, I was like, oh, well, of course it's like this. It's just because, we're a poor nation, we're messed up, and that's why everything else is messed up. And then eventually, I started to really think about it, to think it through. And it's around the same time that God, again, brought some interesting people in my life. Because at that time, my company, my first company at least, was, now I had moved into the nonprofit. We had started a nonprofit because my goal was, how can I help replicate whatever success I was able to have? How can I help many other Magattes or my male counterparts from Africa do exactly what I did with whatever product they deemed to do it with? How could I help with that? And it is during that journey that I eventually even learned about the work of Hernando de Soto. And when I heard about his work, he was right there telling me, Magatte, what you went through What you're going through, experientially speaking, is not an anecdote. This is something very systemic about this. And it is called economic freedom. How easy or hard it is to do a business, you have indexes that measure this. The most known of them being the Doing Business Index ranking of the World Bank. And then you have a Fraser Institute Economic Freedom Index as well, and others and others. Well, what do they all have in common? They all show you one after the other that it is harder to do business in anywhere in sub-Saharan Africa than it is anywhere in Scandinavia. And I take Scandinavia purposely because people who are anti-business, they need to know that Scandinavia is more business friendly, is more pro-capitalist, I'll use the dirty word, than almost any sub-Saharan African nation. And there...
Right, and so the Scandinavian choice is a very interesting one because the rabid and idiot anti-capital...
Who hasn't heard that argument, right? Oh, look at Northern Europe. They are socialists. They're not...
They're socialist on the edges and capitalist at the core and in a very, very effective and efficient manner. And so they are business friendly in precisely the manner that you described. And those principles that you elucidated, minimum necessary laws, that's part of the English common law tradition. Yep. Minimum necessary force of enforcement, that's another good one.
Yep.
And what is it?
Clear,
I think this was Montaigne.
And you also have clear and transferable property rights. And you also have the concept of a rule of law as well.
Right. So those are some of the metaphysical and legislative substrates that make a free enterprise system possible. Because people often also think about only the market working, but you need a set of regulations and also customs that the free market can run on top of, like an operating system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're poor because you have no money. No money because no source of income. A source of income for most of us is a job. Where do jobs come from? The private sector, businesses, especially small and medium-sized enterprises. Then shouldn't we think about the environment of those businesses in which they get to thrive or not? We do, but then when I look there and I look at these indexes, they're all telling me one thing and one thing only is, your region is the poorest in the world because it happens to be the most over-regulated in the world, meaning that as many people fight for freedom and supposedly fight for Africa's rights, no one thought about one of the most important of rights and freedoms after you have managed human rights in its global way, economic freedom.
You list here in one of your articles where you make reference to these rating systems, the bottom 10 countries for doing business in the world: Chad, Haiti, Central African Republic, Congo, Democratic Republic, South Sudan, Libya, Yemen, Venezuela, there's a lovely example, Eritrea and Somalia. And so there are three exceptions in the African ecosystem. Mauritius, Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa, Botswana, and Zambia. You pointed out in your prospectus, is it prospectus article?
Yeah, prospectus article of Artbridge Institute.
Right, that Mauritius is a rising star, and Rwanda is in some ways comparable to Georgia. So some of these countries have started to get this right.
Yes.
And so what's the consequence of that? And what does right mean?
What they have understood, what these countries have understood is that economic freedom is at the center for prosperity building.
Hayek used to say that economic freedom is the mother of all other freedoms. Without it, you can't really be free. What Magatte is saying here is that these freedom indexes show exactly that.
Rwanda, for example, Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, is explicit about it. He said he wants to be the Lee Kuan Yew he wants to be the Singapore of Africa, and Lee Kuan Yew is his model. Now, the dirty mouths are gonna start shouting, oh yeah, see, authoritarian, blah, 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 whatever. Me, I wanna talk only about the on the economic side. If you take Lee Kuan Yew and Singapore as your example, then it means that like him, you're gonna have to be serious about economic freedom. And that's exactly what he did. That's what Singapore did. When Singapore figured that out, they went on to put in the right reforms to make their environment some of the most business-friendly environments in the world, one of the most free markets environment in the world, and you saw the magic of Singapore. Today, Singapore is richer than its ex-colonizer, Great Britain. So when I hear people telling me today, oh, Africa is poor because of colonization, I'm like, please, let's move on from that.
I just love her because this is what I heard all my life in school. I come from Brazil. If you didn't know, it's a poor country. And I've always wondered, why are we poor? Every time, every teacher, they have the same answer. It's because we were colonized, which it doesn't make sense because many other countries were colonized and are freaking rich right now. The United States, for example, Australia, Canada, Singapore, colonization is not the cause of poverty. Overregulation, bad environment for businesses, lack of property rights, all of what they're talking about, that's what causes poverty.
Does it have maybe a tiny percentage in where we are today? Maybe, and I don't know. But I know it's not the cause. Because if it were, many countless countries have been colonized before. And by the way, colonizing one another is humanity's history. It just happened that maybe Africa has been one of the last, colonized region in the world. So in our psyche, it is there, and it acts like nothing happened before to others. But flash news, it's the history of the world. We've been capturing each other back and forth, all of that. So anyway, but the truth is, Singapore, richer than Great Britain today. And then Hong Kong happened. And then because Hong Kong happened, China even today happened. Because China's like, wait a minute, what went on over there? And then China went on to do the exact same thing with its SEZs, the special economic zones, some of the most free market zones in the world. And then look at it happen in communist China, who, when it comes to economics, decided that we're going to do the free market, we're going to be capitalist, because that's the only way. We tried everything else. We killed hundreds of millions of people, and we have nothing to show for it. But now that we're tired of being disrespected members of society, because guess what? That's the other thing too. You want to be respected in this world? You're going to have to be among the prosperous ones for other reasons. Would it be nice, G, that we respect people just because? Absolutely. But that's really not the world we live in. So when China got tired of being disrespected, they're like, maybe we got to build also some prosperity here, because then they're going to hear us. And today, China, being one of the, being where it is at, even Hollywood, who tries to tell the world how to think, is being told by China what movies to make and how to tweak stories and history in order to be palatable for them.
That's a great point. I mean, who can deny this?
You see the power that comes with being prosperous.
This is a long video, and I'm going to stop here. Go watch for yourself. I'm going to leave the link down below. Thanks for watching. I appreciate that you're here. Consider subscribing to my channel and also to my newsletter, link down below. You click if you want. If you don't need to click. But it's pretty good, if I do say so myself. I will see you on the next one. Bye.